Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Relationships are so important in our lives. We are social creatures. We like to be around other people. But with that comes some challenges if you've maybe not picked the right people to be in your life, or maybe things have changed. And I'll never forget when somebody said this to me, that those people don't serve you anymore. And it was a game changer. It was like, okay, time to make some changes in terms of some of the people that I was involved with. We're going to talk about relationships today, how to navigate through that, how to maybe even see the warning signs of some things that are going on. She's an amazing licensed clinical psychologist. She wrote literally the book for your life, Love Yourself and Love Your Life. And she is Ann Creekmore. She's back with us. Hi, Ann. How are you?
Hey, Steve. Good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm loving your book, by the way. It is like the handbook. I don't know if it's reversed here, but it's like the handbook to your life. Like everything is in here. Such an easy read. Very relatable, very grounded in terms of your writing style. Everything you need is really in this book. We're going to do chapter 7 today, basically relationships, right?
Correct. Create healthy relationships. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And a lot of times we have the best intentions, but sometimes it's us, sometimes it's the other person. I know the word narcissist is a word you see coming up all the time now. It's kind of a trendy word. Let's start there. What is a narcissist or a narcissism?
That's a good question. In the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, it's described primarily as the exhibitionistic type of narcissist, which is, someone who thinks they're special, unique, has these grandiose fantasies about themselves, thinks they're really better or they're, than they really are, or they may be boasting, bragging, vain, expecting entitled treatment, and so on. There is also the other type of narcissist that is a covert narcissist. They used to call it the covert, or closet narcissist. We kind of know what's in the closet. You're not outright acting, boasting, and like everything, and are very special. You're in the closet about that. They call that now the vulnerable narcissist. And I kind of have a little joke in the sense that the closet narcissist is one we really don't recognize. And we're the ones really that are vulnerable. They're considered the vulnerable narcissist because they may seem a little more neurotic and self-effacing, and they don't have the self-esteem, but really they have the same issue as the exhibitionistic or traditional looking narcissist. Supposedly, according to personality developmental theory, the personality disorder of narcissism, which I want to get into this because I don't think everybody who's seen as a narcissist is a narcissist like this, but I'm going to give you that example. The idea being that when the child's personality is developed by age 7 or so, and when the child is going through their narcissistic phase, their individuation, rapprochement type phase around 2 to 3 years old, where they're starting to develop a sense of self and they're starting to kind of withdraw or be their own person, some from the parent, individuate, that they realize at a level emotionally that one of their parents, their caretakers, really doesn't love them, really isn't there for them. And so what they do at that point as a defense mechanism is they develop a false self or grandiose self that is always looking for approval. In other words, it's basically like another addict or junkie, where, in the sense of their junk would be, they're going to get approval by other people. They're going to get attention, convenience. So they're out there looking for someone to, praise them or look to, recognize them. And then they're enjoying that. And then they're recovering from that. And then the next thing they're moving on to the next person and basically just trying to look good all the time.
I have questions. I have lots of questions. I'm
be quiet. Sorry
I'm gonna rifle
that,
through
Steve.
right here. Here we go.
I know. Go ahead.
So, because this is such a big deal. And a lot of times in relationships, the one person may say about the other one, he or she is a narcissist. That's why it didn't work out. That may not necessarily be the case. So let's go back to the one parent that didn't give love to the child. Is that the child's perception? Like, for example, let's say parents split up at a very early age for a child. And, maybe dad is removed, he's not around as much. Could that be the perception of the child thinking that, well, dad doesn't love me? So then they go on in life wanting to get approval for what was missing there. Does that sound right?
Absolutely, because I'm so glad you brought that up, because I don't want it to be like, oh, the parent caused this person to be a narcissist.
Right.
And, because it is all in the child's perception.
Okay.
And of course, a parent could die and then that child is 3 or 4 and it can become kind of narcissistic, feeling abandoned, because they don't understand death or they just had an auto accident.
Now my next question, and thanks for clarifying that. And if one parent passed away, the perception is just that.
Yeah.
What is the difference between, and I'm going to go back to what you said, that person always looking for approval or just appreciation? Let's say you're in a relationship and, your partner doesn't give you, like words of affirmation, however love language you want to call it. What's the difference between that?
Well, the person I have used this example, like say a person who is truly kind of narcissistic. The example I give is like, say there's 2 people and one person is selling magazines in the neighborhood. And then there's another person and they're not selling magazines in the neighborhood. Who is probably going to sell more magazines? The one who's selling the magazines. The person who's narcissistic is always selling themselves. That is their, it's kind of like the person who's, an addict of some kind is always looking for the drug or taking a drug. The person who's actually a narcissist is always just looking to get that attention, that approval. Everything they say, in fact, often in the closet narcissist case, they probably look like saints. They actually, are going to say or do everything that makes them, is the correct thing to say to the person. And that would be, and they wouldn't even look like they have a narcissistic tendency. That would be in the closet type.
Okay, I've got another one. I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm gonna follow through here. What if somebody, and this is why I wanted to bring this up right at that point that you're making. So many people are people pleasers for whatever reason it might be. They might be doing it because they felt they weren't good enough and they just want to, just make people happy. What's the difference between the people pleasers and the, covert closet narcissist who is just doing things because they want attention, approval? What is there a difference? What is the difference?
Absolutely. There's a big difference between people who are looking for approval. In fact, or people pleasing, in fact, or codependent, as we say, over functioning or trying to keep things calm and so on. And so there's a very big difference between that. And I would say it's just, I think they say maybe narcissists are 1% of the population. Maybe that's what it is. I would even say that it's possible they're not that high even, because a lot of people who appear narcissistic actually have other misdiagnosed or overlooked or untreated kind of disorders that they act narcissistically. They're not really, like having that personality disorder, which is a very good description of how they behave, but it's not the cause. And that if you erase or treat the other disorders, then they wouldn't even be acting narcissistically. You can think of a lot of people saying that are substance abusers or alcoholics or drug addicts, and they act very narcissistically when they are using, when they're active. When they go into recovery, they, and they're in AA and they're following their higher power or whatever they've done to, to stop, to be sober and work on their moral, psychological recovery. They are not acting narcissistically at all. In fact, maybe the opposite. So in their personality wasn't actually a narcissist. It was, they were addicted to something, and that they were preoccupied, and so they don't have empathy. They're just about getting their fix and then getting over their fix and then finding it again.
So what I'm getting from you is there are a lot of people that have some challenges from their past, most likely, and they're called narcissists, but they may not be. And if somebody is a true narcissist, I mean, they have, all the traits there, everything falls into line. It's not like it's a disease. There's reasons for it that got them there. I'm not giving anybody a free pass here, but there's reasons behind it.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. So let's move from narcissists onto healthy relationships. How do you weed out, what might not, as I said before, serve you? Because that was a wake up call for me. Went through a divorce, and a friend of mine who was she's a therapist. I've known her since I was 17. She's like, my sage. We just text. We don't even talk. And there came a point where she said that, those people, my ex's family, they don't serve you anymore. And it almost felt dirty. Like when she said it, I felt like, the king on the hill, like, be gone with you. You don't serve me anymore. But I got it after a while. Like, things changed and they don't fit in my life. I don't fit in their life. But how do you figure that out? Because sometimes it's tough.
Right. Well, I mean, it's good to have good friends, like you just mentioned, that kind of look out for you. Basically, whoever you're with should, be concerned about your welfare and be able to be open and share, what they think that's going to help you, to point out if something they think, oh, that could be harming you, maybe you don't want to do that. And so having, people in your lives that have your back, basically, is very important.
And navigating, let's say, a partnership, romantic relationship. Let's go there. Let's talk about that. What are your thoughts about that? That's probably one of the hardest types of relationships.
Right. Well, I mean, there are three main connections that make for a long-lasting relationship, kind of like a soul connection, love of life type of thing. And that's what we kind of get drawn to each other around. And those would be like, one, you get romantic chemistry. Of course, that would be important. Second would be that the most important one would be that kind of caretaking, that kind of parenting, devotion, connection. If you feel that way towards the person, you're going to be looking out for them, and you feel that they're treating you that way with that respect and that care, being kind of devoted to your well-being, that they're going to be there and have your back if you're having a crisis or whatever. And then, of course, the third one is being able to communicate, not just in the healthy, polite, tactful, the communication skills, but also having a similar thought world, usually like a similar life philosophy or religion, spirituality, where you can kind of talk deeply about something beyond, the material, more transcending yourself. So you're growing emotionally and together. So those would be kind of three things to kind of look for in a romantic connection. Generally, people get attracted around just maybe the romantic chemistry originally. But if you really don't have the other dimensions, at least two both ways of the other dimensions, like at least you got the devotion, caretaking, best friendship, and the chemistry, or, as friends, maybe you've got the life philosophy and the best friendship type of thing. If it's only like 1.5, like you're with somebody that doesn't really care about you, you care about them, you're really devoted to their well-being, and you have chemistry with them, but they're not really having your back, then that's not really going to last. That's not going to be a long-lasting, kind of satisfying relationship. So kind of you can think in terms of that. And
How
then
about
as
along the way, when things change? Let's say couple has been together for a good amount of time. I've often heard that we reevaluate our lives every 5 years, and then it takes two to act on it, and that's why that there's the proverbial 7-year itch.
right,
I don't know if
right.
that's accurate. I've heard it a number of times.
Mhm.
I can even trace back, and interestingly, in relationships in my life, when I trace back to every 7 years, it's a pinnacle point. Could be a
Mm.
coincidence,
Uh-huh.
but there's something happened in the relationship every 7 years.
Right.
And it might not be a bad thing. It could be change a house, things like that. But I don't know.
Uh,
Just that I got the 7 rule. I don't know. I don't just.
uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But what are your thoughts on
Oh,
all of that?
well, what is your question? Tell me a little bit more
Uh,
specific if
when
you'd like.
couples change,
Uh-huh.
and they grow apart, how do you stay together? How do you prepare for something like that? Yeah, everything started great in the beginning. A number of years go by, and then things change. How do you make sure that doesn't happen?
Right. Kind of like relationships are like a boat trip. You get on, you're going a certain way, but it goes slightly off, and all of a sudden you're way over somewhere else that you didn't want to be.
Yep.
And so, I mean, of course, I would say therapy, like premarital counseling or whatever type of, counseling or emotional growth kind of group things you want to do, or individual, rather, couple things you want to do. And being able to communicate if things aren't going, if you're going apart, then to maybe go get some help, get some counseling. Don't just kind of let it fester and continue on that path till it gets to a breaking point. Kind of go and say, hey, wait a minute, and then get some help to work on whatever it is that could be causing, to figure out what's causing it. Because people bring a lot of baggage into their relationships, what they triggered, traumatic memories, things that happened in their childhood. And so they're reacting more maybe to something that is a trigger for them versus the actual things going on in the relationship. And it can be helpful through therapy to understand what your triggers are, and maybe
Mm.
heal, and hopefully heal your triggers or work your grief through, and not be seeing it and bringing it into the relationship. There can also be a lot of times somebody has some issues or disorders, that are untreated. One person might have there may be a lot of verbal aggression. The person may be in more the early phase of their alcohol problem, and that's a hallmark feature, to
Mm.
become verbally aggressive, disrespectful, defensive, like wanting to do your thing, and then it does, you're not really empathic in the relationship. And that could be something you come in and go, wow, you're actually on this genetic chart working on this progressive thing that you can, you need to work on and change that. It's hard to say, because a good therapist would give, I do this, I mean, that I would do a lot of assessment when couples come in at the beginning. They're going to fill out a whole lot of information about all their symptoms, their history, psychiatric, legal, their developmental history, childhood history, the psychiatric history of family members, they'll
Mm.
take the ADHD test, to see if there's got some ADHD. Then maybe they're acting impulsive. That can really disrupt a relationship, and they're not even know when they had it. Getting to see if they have a dissociative, or on the spectrum for a dissociative identity disorder, spectrum kind of thing. They call it complex PTSD, not the kind of PTSD that occurs when you become an adult, if you have an incident when you're an adult, but the kind that comes from early childhood abuse and neglect, and you've gotten the PTSD of a complex nature, that really can affect a relationship.
Mm.
And so just kind of finding out, well, wait a minute, what's going on? If we're having a problem, let's look deeper of what could be causing this, and what can we do to make it better.
I love that you're very thorough, and proof of that is in the book.
Thank
It really is. What
you.
about what about when one part of a relationship decides to cheat? And I've often heard that it's more that person's issues than it is the other person in their relationship. What are your thoughts?
Right. Um, Well, absolutely. I mean, it's that person that chose to go outside the marriage, and it probably has to do with something that's bothering them that they should have come and talked about in the relationship, where they, should say, hey, we're not having intimacy, anymore. And they may say that, of course, but it doesn't happen. So let's go get some help. Let's get some therapy, some couples therapy, or some sex therapy, and work on our relationship instead of just looking outward as that it becomes a wake up call, that there's something wrong, there's some dissatisfactions going on. And it could be that that person is having their own individual issue. They could be a substance abuser, and they're going out and they're drinking in their business, and they hook up with somebody, and then if they hadn't been, they wouldn't. I'm picking on the alcohol today, but they might not have acted out if they hadn't had the drinking problem and been drinking. And that other person as well, who knows they're married, hooks up with them even though they know they're married, because they're. So there's issues that, to bring in and work on. It's wake up call for the relationship.
Is it recoverable? I mean, can you, in that situation, can you recover from that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, my personal experience of seeing clients, plenty of clients, I mean, they come in because they want to work through the infidelity. They want to heal from what happened to them. And I mean, I even saw one, I think I might have mentioned this before, but the 5 love languages. Yes. And the quality time is one, and it really involves time practically every day, a couple of hours of really just worthless. I call it worthless hanging out, not because it's worthless, but because just being friends, just no pressure. There's no money involved. You're just hanging out, enjoying each other's company, being friends. And you start doing that. And I actually had one couple that once they realized that she was betrayed, and she realized that her love language main one was quality time. He realized it. They started just doing it. She was almost ready. She was forgiven the whole thing.
Wow. Wow.
Sometimes you can hit the right button, and heal something really quickly.
The five love languages, we don't need to go through them today unless you want to, but is that in your book? I didn't see it yet.
I'm not sure, I know that's terrible to not remember everything you put in the book, but
there's a lot in the book, Ann. I'm gonna you get a pass.
It's covering all of the main schools of thought in psychology and psychotherapy. So, sure. But written, like you said, so that everyone could read it and get their little toolbox hand out at the end of the chapter and be able to do it for themselves. But I would say, no, I did not put that in the book. And but there is books written on it, and it's called The 5 Love Languages. And there's a quiz, the 5 love languages quiz you can do right on your phone. You can identify what your 5, they rank order the 5 main love languages and how important they are to you. And you can share that with your partner, and and try to increase that. So it's readily available.
Somebody told me the love languages that it doesn't just apply to couples or romantic relationships. It can be like a parent and their child.
Absolutely. In fact, it was originally for couples, but now it's been extended that they actually have the quizzes online that you can take for your child, depending on how they fill out. There's the book, that companion book for the 5 love languages for children. So yes, you can. It's for anyone to kind of understand what makes the other person, anyone you're involved with, to figure out what their way of feeling loved is.
Everybody, we all need stuff. So, exactly. and in different doses. What I need more of, you probably don't need more of. That's just the way it is, right?
Exactly. It's kind of like, the TV, people like a TV set. You kind of can, if you walked over in the old days and started pressing this off, and you start pressing volume, nothing's happening. You press down, nothing happens. You got to press power. So that's why it's so important to understand how the other person experiences love, so you can provide that, not just provide the way you experience love, which might be a different way. And that's how they should return the love, in the way that you feel it.
Exactly. Yeah. Where else should we talk about when it comes to relationships? What do you think?
Um, well, I don't know. What do you think? Do you want to talk a little bit about disorders that can impact relationships in a negative way?
100%. And I'm guessing we started with narcissist. I'm guessing that some of those could actually be perceived as narcissism.
Exactly. Perfect. Yes, because really underlying narcissistic behavior could be a number of issues or disorders. One, any kind of addiction is going to, the person, if they're actively an addict, they're going to be preoccupied with their fix and not being empathic in the relationship. So they're going to be acting narcissistically. So that could be a person with NPD, even the one in the closet that's acting like they're doing everything to help her for the other person, but actually what they're doing is setting them up in some ways to look, to go down. They don't mean to do that's not necessarily, it's just about them, looking good, and that's how they looked good. So the person went down and they got to look good. There's substance abuse. There's bipolar depression. There's unipolar and bipolar depression. They both can look like depression, or they both. But if it's treated as a unipolar depression, just the flat, not enough serotonin type depression, then they are actually just getting more of a lift of the bipolar addictive lifestyle lift with the serotonin SSRI reuptake inhibitor antidepressant, which in other words, I'm saying is contraindicated for bipolar depression. A person with a bipolar depression is kind of like, has an addictive lifestyle. Basically, they're a person who also has a depression, just like someone with a unipolar depression, go to PCP, get some serotonin, feel better, get a more positive mood. But the one with bipolar has learned how to lift themselves out of depression by becoming manic. Basically, they can spy something shiny, put their running shoes on, start chasing it, and then they've released their own serotonin, their own
Wow.
adrenaline, and they got a high going, euphoric cocktail going without having to go to the bar.
I
And
never
then,
knew that's what we're out of time. I'm like, I look up,
okay,
I'm like, is that even possible? Like overtime.
yeah,
But I know somebody whose wife, they broke up, but he suspected that she was bipolar. And even toward the end of the marriage, when they were even having challenges, she went out and bought a pool. Just wait, you know what?
right, right.
We need a pool.
Overspending is classic,
Yeah.
just buying something, doing something, or infidelity, but
Mm,
it's easily treatable with the correct, atypical antidepressants and with the mood stabilizer types, which they can get by figuring out you got the problem, and then
yeah.
it's like driving something accurate that will level you out so you're not having to go up and down or be depressed.
Or find a way to feel better, i.e., buy things or do something that
Exactly.
you might not
Just
be proud of.
chasing something shiny, and putting your running shoes
Right.
on, and then what goes up comes down because you've incurred negative consequences because you didn't
Absolutely.
think it through. You just went and did it, and then all of a sudden you got to deal with what you just did, and that's depressing.
So
So
how do the book is available on Amazon, right?
correct. Hmm.
And I just want to remind people, and also that it's under a different name as an author, but Love Yourself, Love Your Life. AP Filosa is
Hmm.
your pen name, your main name.
Correct.
If you want to
Hmm.
look for it, just a great book. It really is. There's so much good stuff in there. And if somebody wants to connect with you on a therapy level, how do they do that?
I'm in Virginia, and you can look me up. Psychologists in Virginia. Psychologist is plural and spelled out, and Virginia is spelled out. That would be my website, and it should have all the information on it.
Great talking with you today, Ann. I know it went well, and we hit a lot. When it looks like it was a couple of minutes in, and we're over. So,
Right, the
yeah,
usual.
yeah, and I think we hit a
Good.
lot of things that are topical that
Yeah,
people are talking about today, and
I hope so.
overall relatable. And I appreciate that. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Steve.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. All
Yep,
right,
we'll
take
talk
care.
soon. Thanks.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.